happens after death. The concept of reincarnation says that you, who you really are, is not your physical body, but instead the flame of consciousness, you can call it a soul, within the body. And when your body dies, the flame can continue and move from this body to the next, in your next life. And when that body passes away, you will even go to the next life. And so on. Our soul is actually on a journey of evolving through having multiple life experiences. And I think this idea, which is allegedly true, we don't really know if we're being honest, but it is a nice concept and it does fit in an aligned way with the idea of evolution as well. That consciousness is doing some sort of an upwards journey through the process, through the engine of reincarnation. There are a lot of birds in my backyard, and that's one reason I really like meditating over there. And some of the birds, they drink the nectar from the flowers that you can see in the foreground, a bit blurred out at the moment. We'll come back to these birds, but the problem of answering this question of what happens after death is that we really honestly don't know. And it would be a huge mistake to fool ourselves into saying that we definitely know. Even if reincarnation is true, there is a huge question mark about what that would look like. For instance, are we going to be reincarnated even in this universe or as a human being? Or if we are reincarnated even as a human being, on this planet, would it be a happy life or would we be born totally impoverished? No matter what, we don't really know the specifics, and even within Hinduism and Buddhism, the goal of spirituality is not reincarnation. It is actually to escape that into liberation. Now coming back to the bird, they can actually be a huge inspiration to us. And actually, our good friend Jesus, he gave to me a really good answer on this question of what happens when we die. The birds are our inspiration. Birds, they actually don't live very long, but if we look at them, they live their lives totally freely, enjoying the nectar of flowers, flying around, seemingly no care in the world. They don't have jobs. They don't really look into the future very much. But they're living their lives fully and freely. This is what we can try to do ourselves. There's actually a huge aspect of faith involved in living our lives fully. Most of us, maybe because we're a bit scared, we restrain ourselves and we never spiritually aspire towards liberation and spiritual freedom, taking off the shackles and really throwing them off. And it's not that easy to be spiritually liberated. That's why many people don't do it. If there was just a button you could press, all of us would probably be spiritually liberated. But it takes a huge amount of faith and discipline to go down that route and stick to it. My path that I'm trying to do is to use psychedelics to access liberation and what lies beyond life and what lies beyond death. Christians, they believe in heaven, and generally they think that when people die, if you're a good Christian, you'll go to heaven. Now, me personally, I know heaven exists. I've been there on psychedelic experiences. I don't believe in an eternal hell. That's something I've mentioned before and I won't discuss here. But I'm going to say right now that going to heaven when you die is not good enough. That's not good enough. Spiritually, we want to aspire to access the kingdom of heaven while we are alive. You see, that takes faith. It takes faith to access that while living and to let that radiate through us and then to do God's will. This takes huge faith. And this is something that Christians, and Jesus in particular, showed in their lives. They embodied this faith. And they are willing to let the kingdom of heaven shine through them, even in the most difficult of situations and even when the world persecutes or crucifies you. Okay, so that's touching a little bit on the essence of Christianity there. To have the faith to live from the kingdom of heaven shining through you. This is the goal of Christianity at a deep level, and it is the goal, I would say, of Hinduism and Buddhism, to be liberated and to be living in a nirvana and then to serve the world through that place, serve spiritually by letting these liberated states of consciousness work through you and hopefully spreading that a little bit to the rest of the world, keeping that flame alive. When working with psychedelics, there can be many healing experiences, very, very deep experiences, and it feels like holy water washing through you. If this healing is going to be effective, though, one needs to allow this divine holy water to enter you and transform you and to change you. And when you've taken a nice dose that takes you right to the threshold of liberation, it feels like you're going to step through a portal into another dimension that is totally unknown. And this requires faith from the heart. All one needs to come into contact with is that there's something truly good and truthful and beautiful that can seem scary, but one needs to have this faith that there's something truly good on the other side of the portal and allow that holy water to wash through you entirely. And that takes us to the kingdom of heaven. It takes faith from your heart to, first of all, believe what I'm saying at all, then to acquire a psychedelic, then to take them slowly, go through an entire spiritual process of letting go and surrendering. This surrendering can be so deep that it feels like dying. I've been told that in the olden times, baptism was more hardcore or more near death than it is these days. I was actually baptized as a baby, and then when I was a teenager, after I had a couple of spiritual experiences, I decided that I wanted to get baptized again, ceremonially. And there's a lot of nice symbolism attached to baptism. But in the olden times, I've heard that sometimes they would dunk you underwater and keep you underwater for such a long time that you started drowning. and started having a near-death experience. And when you're working with a psychedelic, when this holy water is washing through you, it can feel like dying because you're letting go of yourself so deeply. You get washed away entirely. It's like a bit of a paradox. If you have the faith, you will enter the kingdom of heaven, but yourself can never enter the kingdom of heaven. Jesus again, he said, just to stick on the topic of Christianity, that a rich man can't really enter into heaven. And actually it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to go into heaven. Now I'm just going to say that who cares if you're rich or not? The point is, you and all your stuff, yourself, cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. You need to let go of all of that. You can, the deep, true self can, but that requires almost dying. It requires surrendering all of yourself. But what you get in return is the whole universe. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but sometimes if you're just looking at the stars, you can feel like you own them. You own the whole universe. And this is especially nice if it's a romantic kind of feeling and you're sharing it with someone. But that's a topic for a different day. If you truly let go of yourself, your stuff, if you surrender that deeply to the point that feels like dying, and the kingdom of heaven becomes apparent and shines through you, the reward is the whole universe. Everything becomes yours. Every bird that you see is the most beautiful, profound thing imaginable. So, although it could sound not nice to surrender you and all your stuff, spiritually speaking, it has the most profound rewards that you can imagine. But again, this requires quite a lot of faith. Very few people, if you listen to this video, if you're listening to this video and you've made it this far in, you probably have very strong spiritual inclinations. So there's a very good chance that you could go out, buy some 5-MeO DMT or 5-MeO malt, meditate every day for years and years, use these psychedelics in a responsible way, go down the spiritual route that resonates with you, and you can really surrender yourself totally. But that journey requires faith to start it on step 1, and it requires faith right at the end as well, when you're dying spiritually. But that's when you'll really know what happens after death, once we get to that point of truly surrendering yourself. So, reincarnation, it may or may not be true, but that's not the goal of your life. The goal of your life, the reason, is for you to get liberated like a bird, to be spiritually free and to enter the kingdom of heaven and let it shine through you. Don't let the world convince you that your life is less important than that. That's the mission of your life. And all of life has meaning. There's no rush. But this is the grand, ultimate reward and purpose of your soul in this dimension. To access the most beautiful rewards, to let that shine through you, and for you to be a blessing unto the world. It's the most amazing thing you could imagine, and that's yours. Look, and it will be rewarded unto you.